Thank you so much for joining us here today. If you've been here for the last two webinars before this one, you'll know my voice and maybe my face. I'm Amy Berkeley. I'm the Vice President of Institutional Advancement at Roger Williams. And this is very exciting for me because the first two webinars really talked about the value of having trusted advisors and friends in your life. But this time we actually have so many representatives, so many alumni from Roger Williams who can actually talk about mentors that they've had in the past and really setting all of our graduating seniors up well for knowing how to identify a mentor in the future and how to really nurture that relationship to make it work for you. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves in a few moments, but before we do that, I will go through a few housekeeping items that we always do. We are recording this we're recording this session so that our fellow or your fellow classmates and our friends can see this if they were unable to join us today. We've disabled all the video and audio for all the attendees, and we'll be using the Q&A feature to field questions from the panel, for the panel. If you would like to ask a question of a particular person, please be sure to put their name around the question so I'll know who to address it to. And we're going to try and get through as many questions as possible, but there may not be time for them all. But at the end of this presentation, we'll be putting up some contact information so that you can follow up with us directly and with our amazing career service team and our alumni relations folks. So I'm going to take a second and just talk about a little bit about the panelists, but then I'll ask them to introduce themselves personally. We have Teresa Agana, who's the Senior Deputy Chief of Staff for the City of Providence and from the class of 2013. We have Nabal Awad from the class of 2012, Managing Director of Alumni and Giving at St. John's Prep. We have Willie Buckeye, class of 2014, Research Project Director for Lifespan. And I believe Brian is, Brian's here, great. And we have Brian LaDuke, class of 2010, Design Strategist and Leadership Educator for Education Design Lab. So I'm gonna let you guys introduce yourselves because I know that you'll be able to talk to our students so much more personally than I, because I'm a little older than you guys. And I have to say, I can't even believe your backgrounds. Like, I was never this accomplished so quickly after college. So why don't we start with Willie, and maybe you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, hello everyone, my name is Willie Buckeye. I am a 2014 graduate of Roger Williams University. I study psychology with minor in anthropology, sociology, and American studies, which I usually say cultural studies, because I really learned about different cultural and different identity. Right now, I currently work, as you know, I Lifespan in with Control and Diabetes Research Center. Prior to that, I was working in workforce development. Some of you might be wondering, how did I go from psychology to now research in with control and diabetes? I have a master's in public health, so I've always had this interest in the integration of public health and behavioral health. So with that being said, I'm currently back in school again to gain a second master's in mental health counseling. So that way that I will be able to do more work on mental health prevention.
Awesome, thank you. Teresa, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is Teresa Agana. I am a graduate of the class of 2013. While at Roger Williams University, my major was public relations, and I had a minor in psychology and Portuguese. I was born and raised in Central Falls, Rhode Island, so born and bred here in the state. I'm the daughter of two immigrant parents and very active in my Portuguese culture. For the past 7 years since I graduated Roger Williams University, I have been working in government. I started working for Mayor Diosa, utilizing my communications degree, and that led me to the opportunity to be now Senior Deputy Chief of Staff for the Mayor of Providence. Have a great job, very much on the front lines right now, supporting all of our residents through COVID-19, and really excited to be part of this conversation today.
That's great, thank you. Brian, how about yourself?
Hey everyone, my name is Brian LaDuke. I'm a 2010 graduate in psychology from Roger Williams. Since then, and being in Rhode Island, I've moved around a little bit and pursued a master's degree in education administration. Started my first role working on college campuses in Georgia at Kennesaw State University, and realized that I wanted to expand beyond working with one campus, and was interested in making a move to Washington, D.C. So then started with a consulting group called EAB that works really closely with senior leaders at education institutions, and I was helping them implement a student success technology. So helping more students to be retained and graduate by intervening through academic advisors on campus. So really closely working with them, both on the training side and across strategically across the leadership for universities. Since then, I was helping to run a boot camp, a code school in Washington, D.C. Called the Iron Yard, now a national brand of those new and emerging models for higher education. And it was that experience that brought me to where I am today, which is at the Education Design Lab, where I'm helping universities effectively act more like startups. So it's sort of a fusion of that senior leadership advising and strategy, as well as helping implement new academic models that are responsive to the needs that employers are asking for today, and preparing students with the skills that they need to be successful graduates. So excited to be here in large part because of the role that so many mentors had in shaping, me getting from where I began at Roger Williams to today. I was really involved on campus as a student leader, and excited to dig into the conversation.
Thank you so much. And Naval, do you want to go ahead? I'm going to actually, after you introduce yourself, I'd love for you to share with us maybe a story about a mentor that you've had.
Ooh, okay, got it. Hi everyone, Naval Wad, class of 2012. I majored in criminal justice with a double minor in communications and psychology. After school, I really wanted to do something where I was helping people and primarily focusing in education, as it really became a passion for me. So I moved on to St. John's Prep. It's an all boys independent school, grades 6 through 12. We are located in Danvers, Mass, so about 30 minutes north of Boston. After being there for a couple of years, I decided I also wanted to pursue a master's degree and went back and got a degree in organizational management, and continued full-time at St. John's Prep. I played a lot of various roles within the organization in institutional advancement. So I really worked from the bottom, kind of worked myself up as we went through a massive capital campaign. So there's been just a lot of organizational change, a lot of growth. And during that time, I've kind of led the alumni community through that process. So I am in my 8th year at St. John's, and I'm really excited for this. Mentors have played a huge role in my life. I love Roger Williams. I have a lot of dear friends from there, and a lot of people I still consider to be mentors to this day. So I'm excited to do this and share some insight. So a quick story about a mentor. Actually, one that really comes to mind pretty quickly is, when I found myself to be a senior and I was trying to explore different areas of, what do I want to do next? I knew I wanted to help people. That I think came a lot from, studying psychology, studying criminal justice, but I knew I didn't necessarily want to go into the justice field just yet, and was leaning towards education. So I worked in I was very lucky to work as a student in the career counseling, the academic counseling office. And Susan Hammond at the time was the director there. And, I was sharing all of these different thoughts around it. And she went, "Hey, I think I've got someone for you." And I think sometimes we think about Roger Williams as just Roger Williams, and we forget that, staff and teachers at Roger Williams have had careers outside of the institution and have a wider network. So she recalled a student she actually had when she was at UMass and was still located in the Boston area. So she connected me with Kristen, that's her name, and she was at the Pine Street Inn doing advancement work and had a really long career in fundraising. So I was able to connect with her. She was incredible and extremely instrumental during the couple of months leading into graduation and afterwards. She is the reason I was introduced at St. John's Prep, even knowing about the school. So my two worlds kind of collided, and the rest is history. And she's someone I still consider a mentor. So I guess my biggest thing is, like, don't be afraid to ask people. I think another group people really forget about is your friends' parents. That is definitely a big group right there of just people who've had different experiences. So that's definitely a mentor story that just really kicked off this career of mentoring that, you know, I find myself every day in.
I don't know why it's okay. Sorry about that. Willie, I'm wondering if you have a similar story about a mentor that really made a big impact on your life.
Absolutely. One of my longest mentors we've been having this relationship since I was in high school, and there was this one conversation that has stuck with me for a long period of time. Essentially, he told me, always put yourself first. In all that you do, put yourself first, because if you put yourself first, then you'll be able to help others. So I have a deep passion to work in the community. I'm constantly volunteering. I'm constantly doing this, constantly doing that. And he told me, like, yes, it's great, and I admire that about you. But you should also find a career that you'll be able to survive on. So, but you should also have a passion for that career. And when I was younger in high school, I didn't think too much about it. I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, you're just saying that to say that. But the more that I've gotten older, and also as a professional, that advice was so important as I reflect back on it, because now with what I do, if I'm not able to support myself, I won't be able to support the communities of which I'm passionate about. So, but then it also relates to when you're flying, they constantly say, in case of an emergency, help yourself first before you help those around you. So again, the whole idea is that, like, whatever you do in life, just make sure that, like, you put yourself first, because once you put yourself first, you'll be able to help multiple people, not just yourself.
Yeah. So Willie, you bring up an interesting point, because a mentor isn't necessarily someone that's just associated with a job search. It can also be a life coach. And I'm wondering, Teresa, if you've had an experience that maybe brought those two together, or if there was someone instrumental in really guiding your life or your profession.
Yeah, absolutely. So who comes to mind for me is my English teacher in high school, Delores Grant. I unfortunately lost my father to cancer when I was a junior in high school, and was definitely in a place where I needed support. And having her as my English teacher, she really just kind of took me under her wing and was there for me, and has continued to be there for me. Because my parents, they both had a 4th grade education. They never went to college here in America. After losing my dad and then having a mom who worked in a factory, I wasn't well versed in how to apply for college, what to think about. And Mrs. Grant, I still call her Mrs. Grant. She asked me to call her Delores. I still can't do it. She helped me apply for college. And every big decision I have made in my life since then, I sit down with her and I ask her for her advice, whether it was accepting the job I have now. When I was competing for Miss Rhode Island USA, she financially supported me because I couldn't afford the sponsorship. She was rooting me on when I was on television at Miss USA. And every single time that I need something, whether it's a life decision, a work opportunity, she's always someone that has really just been there for me. And I think as someone who also grew up in an urban city in a low-income family, we were able to really connect. And I think that's really important when you're thinking about a mentor, is someone who you can really relate with, and finding those moments to really help someone understand that you understand their struggle. So that's definitely someone that comes to mind for me, and is literally someone that she checked in on me the other day and she was like, how are you hanging in there? I know you're busy. So she's still someone I speak with all the time.
Awesome. So Brian, I'm imagining our seniors listening to this, and we have seniors actually from the Bristol campus, but also from University College and some of our graduating graduate students. And they're facing this unprecedented job market. And you graduating in 2010 was not so far after 2008-9, Great Recession. So when you were thinking about going out and getting a job, how did you even think about connecting with a professional mentor that might open doors for you?
Yeah, and it's pretty amazing to think that graduates now are probably facing some even greater windfalls in some ways than our graduates, in 08, 09, and 10. So I don't want to draw too deep a corollary between the two, besides to say that this is a time when network really matters, and when connection, an authentic connection, really matters. And I think I made the decision to go to graduate school because of where I wanted to go professionally. I knew that I wanted to work on a college campus and to be front lines working with college students. I knew that most of those roles required a master's degree. But I only came to that clarity because during my time at Roger Williams, I was involved in things that I really cared about. I got to know what it was like to work on a college campus, and because of that awareness, wanted to pursue my career. So they've had probably some probes of understanding what might be the types of environments that graduates are interested in. But they may also be wanting to explore some of the range and some of the possibilities that exist. So I think Nibal had a couple of great examples. Look to your colleagues and your peers, their parents, their connections. I think careering is a task that people too rarely take on by themselves, and we know way more than me. Right. So when you invite other people in useful ways into your job search, it can only stand to benefit you. The best example for me, my close mentor who I developed a relationship with first when I was actually applying to be part of a regional volunteer position. So I was already looking outside of campus, trying to find other ways to get involved, wanted to see sort of what other professionals were doing in a region, and had the opportunity to be a student volunteer. In those conversations, got to know him very well because he was interviewing me to be part of this regional board. He's a vice chancellor at a campus in the Southeast. And it was when I graduated that he started to kind of cultivate the hey, do you want to come down and do an internship, or how can we stay connected? Can you come onto my campus and do a leadership development session with my executive team of my student government association? So we had an ongoing relationship. I think the thing for current graduates to really be honed in on is how can you connect with people authentically and understand how you can offer them value. When you offer someone value in understanding their world and what their needs are, or reading industry news if you're trying to get into their industry and sharing some of the key points that you're learning about, or avoiding the outreach to just pick someone's brain, but continuing to follow up with them in ways that are adding value, giving them maybe little updates about what you're up to. That's how you maintain authentic, build connections, and maintain authentic relationships. So I think the we know more than me, the connections that are around them, and realizing that, as you heard in all these mentorship stories, many of these are the long game, right? So this is investing in relationships in a network around you based on some of the connections that you have today and those that exist out and beyond your time at Roger Williams. But we have more powerful tools than ever to connect with other people. Between Zoom and LinkedIn, you have the ability to connect with just about anyone in the world, and add to that, doing a little bit of your own research on, what companies are up to, who's hiring, and just sort of maintaining a pulse on your industry and where roles are. And you can shape and position yourself for any number of different roles, assuming that you have some of those basic connections. Most jobs don't get posted on job boards. And so it's really about who you can connect with based on who you know, and understanding what their needs are and serving that you can maintain those connections and build relationships over time.
That's great. So Nibal, we have I'm not sure how many are listening in today, but we've already connected about 60 of our graduating seniors with 60 of our alums, according to their professional, interests. So I can imagine if you're doing this for the first time, you might ask, how should I reach out to these people? What should I talk about? How do I make that authentic connection that Brian's talking about? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think something that's really interesting is before I reach out to someone, I know it sounds a little, snoopy, but it's important to do your research. I mean, I think as Brian pointed out, if there's someone I'm really interested in at an organization, I take the time to do the Google search. I'm always fascinated by the journey people take. A lot of career journeys are not linear. I have a pretty linear one, but most do not. And it's really interesting to see, there might be someone that, I want to get to their position, but surprisingly, they've done this thing. And, oh, wait, I did something like that in an internship. Or, I think of, hey, I want to do what this person's doing, but there's no way I'm going to get there. And then come to find out, oh, they did special events as their entry-level job. That's interesting. So there is, there's something in common there. So sometimes I like to just find, what is there in common? I noticed that, you grew up in so-and-so, so did I, something like that, just to kind of break the ice a little bit. Or, I read this really awesome article about the work that you're doing, and I'd love an opportunity to just discuss it a little further with you. I think people appreciate you taking the time to really get to know them. It goes to what Brian was talking about, having an authentic relationship. It's really easy to see when someone is just reaching out because they want you to help them get a job at your organization. And that's why I think of mentorship is not when you need it at that time. It is, like we said, a long game. You should constantly be talking to people, constantly finding connections, and it should be a slow process. Because ultimately, a good mentor is someone who knows you really, really well and understands your career journey and where you want to go and what your strengths are and also what your weaknesses are. That's the point, right? They're supposed to be the ones that help coach you through those times. So I just think something that's super critical, and like we mentioned, you got to do your homework. It shouldn't feel like a cold call. You should feel like there is a connection. You can relate on some level. And even if, you have a really hard time, I mean, you always can do it. I'm in the business, Amy can agree, I'm in the business where it's all about making fresh relationships and starting fresh conversations. And you got to figure out what's passionate, what that person's passionate about, and where you can relate and kind of start a conversation. So you just got to do your research.
Yeah, that's great. Willie, do you think after you have those few moments or few phone calls when you're establishing a relationship, because I think that's a great point to establish a relationship, but when is it, or is it okay to ask your mentor specifically for something? Whether that's finding, making a connection with someone else in the industry, but someone that they know. How do you approach them for asking them to do something for you?
Yeah, I think it happens organically. I think to add on to what Mabel said, this is a relationship that you're gonna develop over time, and this person gonna know your needs and your wants. So it would just happen organically for them to say, okay, so I know this. It actually just happened to me recently. So I was assigned a mentorship, which this was the first time where I have a mentorship relationship with someone where it was assigned. I did the New Leaders Council program, which is a progressive it's a national progressive program, and part of the program model is that they assign you with a mentor. So I've been assigned a phenomenal mentor that even after the program we continue to meet once a month. And this is something that he proposed that we can continue to do, because once he saw my passion and he saw my dedication, and he knows that there's an opportunity for him to keep mentoring me to reach my my highest my highest level. So with that being said, he knows that I'm interested in behavioral health, and like I said, I'm in school, so I'm getting to the point where is almost time for me to do my internship. So he connected me to one of his colleagues, so that's so this way that I can have an information interview with him. So this is not something that I was gonna ask for immediately, but over time through conversation, it came up, and he willingly did that by himself. And I just want to add another story as people have been talking. I was once part of a conversation, and someone mentioned that there is a difference between a mentor and a sponsor. And essentially what she was saying is that a mentor is someone who gives you advice, who's there for you when you need them. But a sponsor is someone who takes the next steps, who goes on and connect you with another person. This is someone who is invested in your future and your well-being. Again, this also comes with like a level of professional background and professional level, because sometimes a mentor can want to be a sponsor, but they're not in the position to connect you with other people. But a sponsor is someone who, from what she says, that will go above and beyond to connect you with other people. And I thought that was very profound, because I've never thought of it that way, but it makes absolute sense. There's such a distinction between someone who will be considered a mentor and who will be considered a sponsor. You're muted.
So all my kids are home, so I have to keep muting in between, because one is playing the drums upstairs, another the electric guitar, even though they're supposed to be in college courses. So Willie, I think that was such a great point, the difference between a sponsor and a mentor. And Teresa, I know when you first started talking about your mentor, it felt more like, an emotional or someone that really gave you confidence. But if you were to find a sponsor, someone who was really involved in your professional trajectory, do you think that you would share with them sort of your strategic plan of the professional you, and get them involved in how you could make, over the next 5 years, your steps towards a goal?
Absolutely. And I also think it's just always important to have someone in your life you're talking with and having those kind of conversations with. For me, I've really tried to maintain relationships with people that I also want to be like when I grow up. And, seeing I'm someone who's really passionate about women's issues. So seeing people that are in that space and regularly reaching out to them and asking how they got to where they are. People are so willing to give you information and to support you. So even if you don't think of them formally as a mentor or a sponsor, try to find those people in your life, because even as someone who, serves on the Roger Williams Alumni Board, I love it when people say, hey, like I saw you're on the alumni board, can I ask you a question? And I'm like, absolutely, I'm here to help. And I know that stands, I'm sure, for everyone on this conversation today, but like people are just ready and willing to help each other, which is so amazing. And if you can identify those people that you want to be like when you're older, in a year or 5 years, people are so willing to have that conversation. At least that's what I have found.
Brian, what do you think? So actually, let me ask you this question. Have you been asked to be a mentor to someone else?
Yeah, I want to add yes.
Okay, no, go on.
I'm going to go into more detail there. The other thing I wanted to say here, just pragmatically too, thinking about the landscape that people are encountering, and this feeling that like mentorship is this big long thing that happens over a long period of time. It's built on meaningful, authentic connections. People are like, yes, but like everything around me is suggesting this is a difficult time to search for jobs, and like I need to know something today that I can work on. One of the interesting facts about the job search, so much of it's based on referral. most people are likely to be referred for a job by their second or third degree connections, which means it's not the people that you know right now, it's the people they know. And so there's those weak tie connections can be just as meaningful for this sort of transactional, like looking for a job at this company. Can I learn a little bit more from you about what the culture is like or what the interview process is like? Those types of asks, I think if they're built on a runway of a little bit of sprinkling value to them. Hey, I've been reading this industry news and I thought this would be something that you're interested in. Nibal had a great example of somebody wrote this blog post. I think it would be really interesting to reach out to them and say, I love the post, would love to discuss it further with you. So there's like that element of weak tie connection that you're offering value to them and will likely be the thing that translates to how you get some more visibility and where opportunities are and can quickly move you from, zero in terms of I see a job post that I'm interested in, but I don't know anyone at that company, to a second or third connection who can then refer you there. Because the other key point that, the resume is important to tell your story and to organize yourself. But more often than not, those are going into what are called applicant tracking systems, which are effectively a black box. You don't know really what the technology is beneath them, but it's pulling a whole bunch of stuff off your resume. And someone on the other side is looking for key phrases and terms that are being used on that thing and filtering out a list of probably 10 or 15 people that they're going to talk to. So the idea that you can go to the top of that list, or at least be on that list by a referral because someone in the company said, hey, this is a person who I think would be worth a second look, is a really powerful tool to get into that stage of the process. But yes, have delivered mentorship in shorter terms and spurts in a regular way. But in many cases, I'm giving these suggestions about, quick value and turning things around and building relationships with someone over time, because I've seen more examples of people reaching out wanting to pick my brain, which is a bad use of my time. And it's a bad use of my connections and resources. Not for me. I'm not saying that as a personal value judgment. I'm saying how someone could utilize the resources that I could be able to provide for them if they thought about that connection to me differently is a really powerful change in mindset. Because to think about someone as a person whose brain to pick leaves out that they have connections, and those connections are probably the ones that are going to get you that referral to that company that you want to work for. So it's important to think about it that way and cultivate it over time and build the relationship behind it, but know that some of this can be short-term and transactional as well.
That's a great point. And I wonder if, Nibal, you can answer this question. I don't know if you've had any mentees, but imagine a situation where a mentee came into your office and just blew you away. You were so impressed with the questions they asked, how they presented themselves. Describe what that interaction would be. What does that person look like?
Someone who's on time, right? On time, but I think I just think is very excited. They present an energy of they want to learn and absorb as much as possible and are asking the right questions. And, I say right questions back to the point of they've done their research. They've been thinking about this. They've taken the time to have a really thoughtful process of like, this is how I think I'm going to get there. I want to share kind of my plans, my thoughts. How did you get there? Someone who's really invested in learning from me. I've sat in on conversations where, I meet with young alums all the time, and I find myself a lot in a position where I'm helping coaching them. And, they show up, some of them will show up and I'm like, all right, so, what do you want to talk about? And they're like, oh, well, like I want this job. And you can tell that they're just hoping that someone will just give them the answer and the roadmap. And that's not how it works. So when I meet someone who has done the research, who is also sharing with me that they've taken other steps to try to get there, they've taken the initiative to talk to A, B, and C. They've done this research, they've looked at this company, and then they've got all the other stuff, right? They're doing the work. I mean, I think Brian's the one that told me this once. I think after I landed one of my first promotions or whatever, and or something, and I was really excited about it. And I just said I felt really lucky. And, Brian said, well, it's not luck, it's hard work. And it really is. And you just like anything else, if you want it bad enough, you've got to put the work in, and a mentor can pick up on that very easily. I think we all naturally want to help people. We especially want to help young folks who are ready to start their career. And if we see promise in someone, we're going to invest the time. I work much harder with an alum that I know is doing the work, and I will go above and beyond to help them make those connections versus the other person who I know has some more work to do and some more reflection to do. So that is very obvious. It's just like showing up in class. If you don't do your homework, it's clear. So you can't fake that.
So, Teresa, a lot of the information and a lot of the skill sets we give to graduating seniors is about informational interviews. It's amazing how many people will take your call or respond to your email if it's heartfelt and they really see that they can give some information from their background. If you were to have an informational interview, someone you didn't know, from before, would it be okay if they asked you after the interview to be their mentor?
I think it depends the nature of the conversation. I think you're going to feel whether there's this kind of connection in that conversation, and you're going to tell whether that person just wants to hang up the phone or if they're genuinely answering your questions. And so if you feel that connection, I think it's definitely okay to end the conversation by saying, this was really helpful. Would you mind if I reach back out to you if I have any questions? Or, planting that seed to say, can I keep this door open? I definitely think that's okay. Maybe not formally saying hey, can I set up a mentorship right now? Check in with me once a week kind of thing. But I definitely think depending on the nature of the conversation, if it feels like there's that connection, absolutely. It's part of the challenge is it's a little awkward for some of us to put ourselves out there. And I'm totally not trying to disregard that. But if you take that leap of faith and just plant that seed, the worst they can say is no, and then you're ending the conversation anyway. But if they say yes, you're now starting this connection. And, I, a few years ago, I went to this event with the mayor because we were getting a grant from the New England Patriots, and it was my day off. It was 8:30 in the morning, but I have always loved football and always wanted to work for the New England Patriots. And so I just took it upon myself to go to the event, and because I just wanted to be there. And I ended up standing near someone, and he was like, hi, I'm so-and-so. And I had been doing a lot of research on the job I wanted one day to work in for the New England Patriots, doing communications or some type of community engagement. And he was literally the vice president of that. And we just happened to stand near each other because I put myself out there and I happened to go to that event. And then because I actually knew his name, I was like, oh my God. And he was so kind of taken aback, but also freaked out that I knew who he was, because he's someone that's very behind the scenes. But he was so impressed that I actually had spent the time really looking into the organization to not know about the football players, but who are the staff that are advancing the good work of that team. And we have actually to this day remained very close, and we'll check in on each other. We just had dinner a few months ago, and he's someone that I have reached out to for advice. And it's only because I put myself out there on my day off in the morning and just happened to strike a conversation. And I could tell in that conversation, he was so kind and we were really connecting. That's why I sent the follow-up email. And, here we are a few years later and we're friends. So, if you can take that small leap to say hey, I'm putting myself out there. Can we continue this conversation? Can I connect back with you? You'll be surprised at how well it could go.
That's great. That's great. Willie, I know that you're a very established gentleman at this point, but if you were to think about anything that you could have changed after you graduated college and went on, is there anything that you think would have gotten you to your point now faster, or do you have any reflections on that?
I don't know, because I feel like everything that I've done so far have prepared me to be where I am today. The only thing I wish I could have done differently was perhaps not gain a master's degree, but at the same time, my master's degree is valuable to me now because my public health training really informed me on how to engage with the community, but also look at the big picture. So, like I said, after I graduated with my public degree, I work in workforce development. A lot of people like how you go from public health to workforce development, but there is a correlation. Everyone needs jobs to live. So with other income, you won't be able to survive. And public health is all about finding ways for you to survive. So right now, my public health degree, I can go in any discipline and actually utilize my public health background. So that's every now and then, like, sure, again, my passion is in behavioral health. So that's where I want to end up being in. So every now and then I will question, should I have just gained a master's in mental health counseling instead of doing public health? But in truth, again, my public health training really informed me on the big picture stuff that I don't think I could do things differently. I think, again, all of what I've done so far had definitely prepared me to be where I am today.
That's great. Well, I'm going to get to a few more of these questions, and I know at the end of our time, Megan Hansen, who's Roger Williams' amazing Director of Alumni Relations, is going to be putting up a slide that will have information for all those in our audience who have not yet signed up for a mentorship program. We're doing a whole nother matchup, I think, in the next 2 days. But Brian, I want to ask you one of these questions, this is interesting. So we have an audience member that says, I hear that reverse mentorships are becoming very popular. Do you know what they are, and do you have advice about how a student can become one?
Yeah, I think this gets to a lot of what we've sort of been saying here in how a good mentee positions themselves. And so reverse mentorship, about this sort of being able to give value back to the person who's mentoring, or be able to share and grow by sharing a skill set or something that you can contribute to that other person's career and development and growth. I would say under the circumstances, highest value for folks right now is thinking about how can they make connecting with you as clear and as easy as it can possibly be, right? Know what it is that you're looking for in that connection. Be able to show that you've done your homework and research. Teresa, I loved your story about standing next to the VP of the Patriots. It's like the perfect moment of preparation and opportunity. But that requires a whole bunch of work that happens in the back room on the cutting room floor that you don't see. So I think understanding what you're looking for, making it clear and easy for someone to help you, and thinking about how you add value for that other person. I think one of the other things to bring into a habit is that oftentimes when you're building connections with new people, time translates into the connection and the interest and the engagement level. So I think in addition to bringing that really good energy on the line when you're connecting with someone like Nibal was talking about earlier, I think it's also important to follow up quickly and give people a clear way of taking away that you understood the guidance that they gave to you, right? Now I'm going to go off and do X, Y, and Z things. Thanks for the tip. Thanks for the resource. Thanks for the read. Purchase the book. It's on the way. Whatever signal is that you're taking their advice seriously earns you the next round of communicating with them, and give those little status updates. The next update isn't, oh, I got a job. How exciting. It's someone wants to schedule an interview. It's, I read that, I finished that book. Those small interval updates along the way are additive in value to that person when they understand that they're part of your journey, and offering along the way and understanding where needs do surface from them, how you can add value, right? So if they say, oh yeah, I saw your post on LinkedIn, that you tagged me in a post on LinkedIn asking for my advice. Well, I don't really know how to use it. You're like, well, I'd love to sit down for half an hour and walk you through how I use it, right? That's a way that you can add value that stands and extends beyond what you, and maybe if originally connected with them around, or things that you had in common with them. So I think it's a really powerful tool, but it's really about adding value.
That is such a great comment. And I especially liked some of the thoughts you had about time. Naval, you also had a really interesting point about accessing the parents of your friends as potential people that you can network with. I think that sometimes younger people think that they need the rising superstar, the 40-year-old that everyone wants to be around, when sometimes the executive that's just retired has a lot more connections for you and actually has so much more time to invest in your development. I wonder if you have any thoughts about that.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, some of the best mentors and resources we find even at St. John's are retired alumni. A lot of them are still involved in organizations and boards, volunteering their time. They typically know everyone there is to know. I mean, they have potentially now served at 10, almost 15 organizations, and they have the time to commit to your search. So yes, that's definitely really important. I think the most difficult mentor to get is the person who's at the top of their game. It's the hardest person to schedule a meeting with. It may take 2 months just to get a 20-minute phone call. And, it's not that they don't want to help. They just sometimes don't have the time. A lot of them are coaching massive teams and doing that mentoring every day. So, and don't look too far beyond. I think sometimes our strongest mentors are our peers. They're the folks that have only, they're who you want to be right in 2 years, in 3 years. And then sometimes have more time and can relate to your journey easier, right? They've just done that. They know what it feels like to come out of school and be looking for a job. And they've got friends too who are in the same positions. Even now, as my friends look for jobs, they're asking them about, their coworkers and people that they know. I always, when I'm talking to young alums, I go, okay, think about your 5 closest friends. Do you know what all of their parents do? Mm-hmm. You don't, because you never think of your friends' parents that way. And then come to find out, oh, his mom's kind of a big deal. So, and I've been at her house, pretty much every day for the last 5 years. So just kind of thinking about that, thinking outside the box. Your neighbors, oh my goodness. Neighbors are definitely another huge thing. I mean, I think people don't even realize that someone a couple blocks from them, is doing what they want to do. So I think even some of the resources the alumni office at Roger Williams provides with these mentoring platforms, being able to see who's in your radius. That's a great icebreaker. Hey, just found out we grew up in the same town, or you live a couple blocks away. I'm also a fellow Roger alum. That's really easy. So just think out of the box. Don't, when you're at just events like, Teresa mentioned, oh my goodness. It's just, the world is a lot smaller than we all think. So I don't think you got to go to, Forbes, top 50 to find the mentor. So.
Well, and Naval, I know that you have to go, unfortunately, but
I do,
yeah, it was so wonderful having you on the panel. And I'm sure there'll be some people who say, well, can I go see Naval?
Yeah, I'm happy to help. I'm home working.
I want to go see Naval.
I know.
So I'm committing to my lunch breaks. So I'm happy to talk and so happy to help.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank
I'm going to
you.
go to, bye-bye. I'm going to go to one more question and then we're going to wrap up. And we're going to put the information on about Roger Williams and how to get a mentor. Teresa, I wonder if you might, since you've done this already, how do I jumpstart my conversation with a mentor that I am getting assigned to and will talk to for the first time virtually, even though you were standing next to your mentor?
Yeah, social distancing now.
Yeah.
Namal was just kind of talking about this, but there is one thing you can relate to just about anyone, whether it's, I love the color you're wearing, I'm from your hometown, how do you pronounce your last name? It definitely gets a little harder to make friends and like build those relationships as you get older, because you're so often only in professional settings and you don't find yourself so often in the social settings. And obviously now no one's doing anything social, but if you can just find one small thing to reach out to someone. I was just, so I for the past 6 years, I've managed the Mayor's Fellowship Program every summer. And annually I hire 4 people. And I can always tell you that when I see someone who reaches out to me to ask a question, they're like, oh, I saw you went to Roger Williams. I'm like, oh, hey, what's going on? Like, it just gets me so excited. And now I have a like connection with this person I've never met just because they threw that out there. And for that program, I'm hiring 4 people, 40 people are applying. And so now when they come to the interview and they say, oh yeah, I was the person I said I went to Roger Williams. I'm like, oh, that's right. I just like kind of am a little more interested. So if you can just find the smallest, simplest thing, it really can be the difference between you know, getting a job or getting a mentor, or like really building that connection with that mentor before you start your relationship. It can be so simple.
Well, and I should have asked you at the beginning how to pronounce your last name. I'm sorry if I
Oh, you're fine.
Brian and Willie, I wonder if you might add a few comments to help us round out this discussion. Brian, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Yeah. One thing I'll say is when you're starting your search process and trying to figure out what you might be interested in, or trying to create sort of a package of where to go to look for some of the research that you might be doing about different companies, or about what opportunities might be out there, or about who you know that might be connected in those various industries. It can start pretty small. You know, go to LinkedIn, put out a clear post where you're asking for exactly what it is that you're looking for. I'm looking for understanding more information about social impact organizations focused on blank education, you know, whatever it is. And tag a couple of people that you know are just in maybe adjacent type work, or who are also in education, or part of a student organization that you were part of, or who are professors in classes that you taught that were particularly interesting or focused on those things, or the internship that you went to. Tag those people on LinkedIn in that post. Then they might just comment with feedback about resources to go to. So you can shortcut some of this. If they're simple asks, those can be things that you engage with virtually, and they might chatter into a conversation that you would then reach out to them and say, hey, can I jump on the phone and talk to you more about so-and-so? So use these digital tools that we have available to us that can propel a search that gets you into those second or third tier connections, that, you know, will bring the resources and the serendipity that comes to you. I think one of the things that also just will, you know, remind people in the job search is there's a lot of this that is focused on the right time and the right place, but you have to be in the right time and the right place, knowing the things that are needed, both of you and about the company to be successful in maximizing that moment. So serendipity will come, though, you know, because you'll connect with people who are in those spaces, or having those conversations. If you're regularly staying in relationship and updating people, you know, giving them insight on your progress, you know, making quick asks, sharing resources, it's the time to stay connected. Virtual tools make that really, really easy. So lots more to share there, and happy to do that with folks that are interested. But that would be my lasting thought is you have the most powerful set of tools right in front of you at your computer. And it's a matter of learning how you can tag people into those conversations and ask direct, clear questions, and then connect with people in short, ongoing ways that add value.
That's great. Thank you. And Willie, we're going to let you close us out today. Imagine that you are in your junior year, you're about to jump off this cliff into your senior year and think about, what am I going to do? What's the job out there for me? What advice would you give to your younger self at that time?
Yeah, I would definitely say informational interviews, I think is very critical, and that's one way for you to get an insight of what someone's doing. the job that you want. I think I've done that a lot now, where again, like Teresa said, like you meet someone and you find them very fascinating, and you just want to learn more about them. So I typically will ask them for their business card, or find their email on like LinkedIn, or whatever platform I'm able to find information, and just email them to ask them for an information interview, because I think like there's such a value in learning what you're getting into. Yes, the textbook can tell you what this field is gonna look like, but when you're actually meeting with someone who have like a long history in the field, they can give you more insight and even more advice on how to go. And like everyone had mentioned, it's very important for you to do your research on the person of which you're going to speak to. And I will also add, always have something to talk about. One or mentor that I meet with maybe every month or every other month, we always pick a topic to talk about, whether that's a book or current event that's happening. But there's always a conversation to talk about. So it's that way that he's getting to know me, and I'm also getting to know him as well. So definitely keep that in mind.
Thank you all so much for spending time with us. We started out this webinar series. This is, as I said before, this is the third one, by saying that one of the things that happened almost immediately after Roger Williams had to make the decision to not bring students back is this incredible outpouring from our alumni, from our trustees, from our volunteer leaders, from really everyone that had graduated from Roger Williams, wanting to create a safety net for all of our graduating seniors now. And it's really felt, and I feel, it's just humbling to work at a place that has this tradition that you guys are perpetuating. So from the bottom of every administrator's heart here, thank you very much. And I am sure we're gonna see you soon. I am gonna let Megan put up the slide. I think that's gonna be up for information for all of those who have not yet connected for our mentoring program. We're doing a second and third outreach in the next couple days, and there are lots of people out there to support you. So thank you all very much, and hopefully next time we see each other, it will be in on the campus. That would be the best. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.